Hi there, and welcome to English for the Long Run. I'm Monique, your host, and I'm an English teacher, language learner, and most importantly, I'm an amateur runner who loves to talk with runners from all over the world. Every 2 weeks, I interview inspiring runners about running, life, and everything in between. If you love to run and you're looking for a different way to improve your English, then please hit the subscribe button. You can also visit my webpage www.englishforthelongrun.com for more inspiration and tips. Hope you enjoyed here, and thank you for listening. So today I'm joined by Kike Nieto. Kike Nieto is a friend. He's a 45-year-old runner who started out as a Spanish teacher in London and who has been working since 2006 as an English teacher at a secondary school in Madrid. He also collaborates with the Spanish running podcast A Tu Ritmo, hosted by Luis Blanco and Chema Martinez Pastor. That's where we met. A Tu Ritmo is one of the most popular running podcasts for Spanish amateur runners. Kike is also a language enthusiast who loves to combine running with traveling, and these passions have led him to race in cities like Berlin, Dublin, or Nice. All in all, Kike has done around 120 races, of which 50 were half marathons, his favorite distance, and he has run 19 full marathons. Today we're going to talk about the Madrid Marathon that took place last Sunday, April 23. It was his number 12. It was going to be my second, but unfortunately, due to an injury, I was not able to race. My hamstrings were too painful to run, so I was a DNS. I did not start, and it sucked. I felt terrible. Having said that, I had a great time spectating, the second best plan of the day, and I'm sure that talking with Kike will make me smile as well. So thank you for joining me today, Kike.
Thank you. And I'm really sorry to hear about you missing out on your marathon, but I have to tell you that spectating and cheering is very important. You don't believe how it is such an emotional time that you appreciate really anything, even the very cheesy sentences that if they tell me out cold, no pain, no gain, you are one step away from glory, you think, oh, how cheesy. Then you see that when it's only 10 kilometers and then you're on the verge of tears thinking, oh, yes, it's going to be absolute glory. And so it really is, well, you've been there, so we appreciate it very much. And also let me say that it's a big privilege for me to be in your podcast because it really is my favorite podcast. I'm looking forward to every other Friday, listening to all of them, and I'm a devoted follower, and I really enjoy your interviews. So,
thank you so much for this
honor.
Huge compliment. You know, you helped me a lot because you always come up with very, very interesting suggestions for interviewees. So thank you so much. And it's
not
true.
Me. I wasn't my own suggestion, I have to say.
No, you have great suggestions. You know, I think you were the one who tipped me to talk with David Harvey, the one who ran the Tunnel Ultra, and some other guys as well. So thank you so much. And it's absolutely true what you say about cheering on. It's very satisfying to do that. And it was great because I was on the corner of Brabo Murillo, which is a street very near my home, and I was cheering on all the people who passed by. And I got a lot of thank yous and a lot of people who cheered me on and who clapped for me. So it was really very nice. It was very, very special for me. So let's talk about the Madrid Marathon, Kike. We are recording this interview on Wednesday. So you ran Madrid 3 days ago. How are the legs doing? How sore are you?
Well, I'm actually not bad at all. I was, it's lucky that the interview didn't take place on Monday as we had predicted, because I would have to be standing up, sitting down, moving, because I found it really hard to sit still or even lie down, and it's one of those things that nobody tells you about it, but it's true that the first night after a marathon is difficult to sleep because your legs are too sore. But I find that the Monday after is quite bad. Tuesday is bad in a different way, but then Wednesday I am kind of okay, and then by Thursday, unless you pick up an injury, and I'm okay. But yeah, Monday and Tuesday where I was walking like Robocop, for people from our generation will remember him. But the other thing about this is that morale goes through the roof. Okay, you get a runner's high after you run a marathon because it's such a challenge. So it's a mixture of both, and you've seen what you were saying about so many people cheering you and everyone in your environment asking about it, and your family makes you feel very special.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So this was I think it was the 45th edition of the Madrid Marathon. The first one was held in 1978. And I went through the statistics and I found out that 8,000 runners took part in the 10K, 70,000 did the half marathon, and 9,000 ran the marathon. Overall, there were 33% of women and 67% of men, and 102 different countries were represented. As I said before, you ran Madrid 12 times. The first one was in 2010. So you are an expert. What has changed over the years? How is the Madrid Marathon evolutionized? What is the difference between the one you ran in 2010 and the one you ran 3 days ago? What can you tell us about that?
I think all in all, it's a more professional organization. Okay. You feel it in details, for example, with water stations, with toilets, the rock bands, the waves, the start waves. So you feel that they're sort of getting better every year and more professional. And I've run abroad, I've run in other places, and you don't feel the difference. There is this inferiority complex in Spain and in other places that anywhere else is better. Well, I think we get good value for money. The volunteers were amazing. So I'm all in all, I'm very happy with it. And the other big difference is that we have the 3 races. Okay, so when I started, the first year that I ran in 2010, it was the first year that there was one other race, and it was a 10K, 10,000 kilometers. And they brought Haile Gebrselassie that year, and I met him. So I was on the when I went to pick up my bib, my number, then he was there. So it was quite special.
And did you say hi to him? Did you have a chance?
Yeah, I took a picture with him, and he was very nice and friendly and so on. And he said something, that interview, I'm drifting away a little bit, but that's common.
That's okay.
So I remember reading an interview, and the interviewer was sort of a bit smug and saying, what do you think about these people that spend 5 hours running and doing what you can do in 2 hours? And maybe hoping that he would just say that we're a bunch of useless losers or something like that. And on the other hand, said, I admire them. And I remember Gebrselassie saying, I admire them because I see the pain I go through in 2 hours, and putting up with that and showing that determination for 5 hours is amazing. And I thought, that's an amazing answer, and that
absolutely
represents what running is about. So coming back to the changes in Madrid, I think the biggest change has been the introduction of the half marathon. Because if we look at the numbers that you mentioned, there are 8,000 running the 10K, which is at 8 in the morning, so it's not simultaneous.
Exactly.
But then there are as many. If we add together the numbers from the 10K and the marathon, is 17,000, the same as the half marathon. So really the main event, at least numerically speaking, is the half marathon, where you have 17,000 people. And that contributes to the atmosphere and to the number of people, and also to the organization. On the one hand, making money and showing muscle, saying we got 34,000 people participating in our event. When actually it's not such a big marathon if we think about it, with 9,000 people for a capital. But having said that, I think it's doing well, and I have no problem with the half marathon being simultaneous. One year we had the 3 races setting up at the same time, and that was more difficult. But they learned the lesson from then, So, but then they learned the lesson, and now I think it's well organized, and they've been sort of improving. We've gone through different problems throughout the years. There was one problem with them whatever. Whenever people left their clothes in one place and they had to pick them up from another place and so on. One year there was a huge problem because some of them were lost. We had another year which huge torrential rain in 2015, but then they did very well as well. There were lots of different stations, and when we got to the finish line, we had plastics and some plastic blankets to cover us. So I think it has become a better marathon.
Yeah. I can't compare anything because I have only done one marathon, and it's the Madrid Marathon, but I was in awe last year. I really liked it. Another question. I have a huge respect for the pacers. How was it this year? Did you follow a pacer?
Yeah, I did. I did last year, and I wanted to do 3:30 last year. I went with this particular pacer, and I finished in 3:29:55.
Wow,
which is
so
my most
crazy.
satisfying time because and I finished with him. So that's
amazing.
Unbelievable that someone would just time it to the second when you're talking about 42 kilometers and with the course that we have in Madrid. So this year I went back with the same guy, and he's
the same guy. He was the same guy.
He's the same person.
You know him?
Yeah, well, I since last year,
you recognize him.
3.5 hours is a long time. So
yeah, that's true.
You get chatting and so on. And also, he has run it for a number of years, and we have some common friends. So it was easy to establish a relationship last year and this year. So it's nice. But this year, when I go to kilometer 35, 36, I don't know if it was too hot, if I was too tired or so. So I slowed down, and he went on. But I think it helps, Not only because you need to pace yourself, but also because of the company, because someone is deciding for you. And I think you push yourself a little bit more until maybe you drop down. But then I talked to someone that knew the pacer, and he finished in 3:29:40 something this year. So he does it very, very well.
Yeah, they really nail it. It's incredible.
And also, they're always very upbeat, and they always have a kind word to say, and they're urging people to cheer you on, because sometimes it's a bit frustrating when you're going through the center. There are people on either side, but they're not clapping or anything. So if you go with a pacer because they carry the balloon and they seem to have the moral authority to ask people to cheer you on.
It's true. It's true. Yeah, absolutely. Talking about that, I mean, as you were saying, Madrid is a tough marathon. A lot of people fear Madrid. A lot of runners avoid Madrid, mainly because it's a city that's 600 meters above sea level. And also the course is all but flat. In Spain, in Spanish, we call it a rompepiernas. And I think you can say in English, a leg-breaking terrain. The course is either uphill or downhill. And as you said, the last bit is probably the toughest part, the last 6-7 kilometers, because it seems to be all uphill. So nobody runs Madrid to set a personal record. You can better go to Seville or Valencia. So you have run Madrid 12 times, and you have done 7 other marathons as well. What are the pros of the Madrid Marathon? Despite its toughness, why would you recommend it?
Well, it's a bit difficult for me to be objective because I'm too involved. It's a little bit like talking about your children or or if you're a doctor and someone in your family is your patient. Because, I'm too involved, and for me, it's part of my yearly routine. I know quite a few people from running groups I've been involved in or friends I've made with running. So for me, it's more than just a running event. But I also think that all this talk about personal bests and getting, yes, it's nice to get a personal best, but there's only so many times you can get it, And once you run on a very flat terrain, or maybe one that is slightly downhill, okay, you got your personal best, and then you need to run again one of those races, and you're always stuck on there. And there's more to a race than getting a PB. So I would say that, yes, everything you said about the altitude, everything you said about the course, and it's true. but it's well organized. There are quite a few people in the streets. It's quite monumental. The finish line is great too. I think it used to be inside a park. Now it's outside the Prado Museum and the very center of Madrid. And I think it's got everything that a big marathon could wish for. Well, yes, it's not the easiest to run, but again, at the same time, it's not impossible. And to be honest, if you're used to running this kind of terrain, I find other races a bit boring. And in fact, the most boring part of this marathon is two stretches. One is a 2 kilometer stretch, and the other one is a 3 kilometer stretch that is almost flat and in a straight line. And I find that incredibly boring. Whereas for the first 21 kilometers, you hardly have more than 500 meters in a straight line, or you're going up, down. And if you know it, you're getting ready for something coming up, and it makes it a bit more varied. So I think it's great, and to be honest, I'll sign up for 2024 as soon as
you can.
I can. Yeah,
I think it's very soon. I think you sent me the application already.
Yeah.
You can already apply for Madrid.
Yeah, on the 1st of May, they open. But I like it, and as I said, and also I would advise anyone, either from Madrid or from whichever place they live in, to run their first marathon where they live. That's something that I would definitely do, because you sleep on your bed, you have dinner at home, you have breakfast at home, and then when you finish, you go back home, and if you have to die, you die on your bed, right? You don't have to, and you don't have to travel, and so it's much easier. And also you recognize the streets, so there's always adventure in traveling to other places and running other places. But I think the first one should be in your home city, if at all possible, because you know the place, and it's a different way of feeling that you own the place when you run around it, and you get to know it better, and you establish a more intimate relationship. So come to Madrid, or if you're in Madrid, start running marathons in Madrid. Don't be scared.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, it's very stressful to travel to a marathon or a half marathon, and running a marathon is so stressful. It's just enough stress for the day, I think. So yes, I totally agree with you that. I thought your favorite distance was the marathon, but I think you said to me, no, it's the half marathon. At least it's the distance you have run a lot of times. But what you said to me, you feel most inspired by the marathon distance.
Mm-hmm.
So what is so appealing about running the marathon? Why do you feel attracted to something that, in a sense, is quite out of control? I mean, look at me. I mean, you have a higher risk of injury, a higher risk for not being able to complete your training sessions. And as you must sign up for it at a very early stage, like 4 months or 5 months, or if you really want a discount, you sign up for it a year in advance. You never know if you're going to make it or if something else is going to come up. So what is it about a marathon?
Well, what I meant about the half marathon is that it's a distance that I control completely. So it is one of those things that if someone's expecting me at the finish line, I can tell them I'm going to be there between 11 and 5:11, and I know that unless something major happens, I know that's the time it's going to take me. If on a very good day, I'll do 1:30, on a very bad day, 1:35. But it's very strange that I go either side of that. So in that sense, the distance doesn't control me. I control the distance. And it's my own perception because of my training, and because I end up doing 20K or 25K every weekend. So it's something that I'm used to. And for me, it's no effort. Okay, I can have not that I go out that much, but I can go out, I can have dinner with friends, I can go to a concert, and then the next day I can do my 20K training, no problem. But the appeal of the marathon, as it is precisely that is out of your control. And that's in part, that's the beauty of life as well. You know, it's a metaphor for life. The more difficult it is, the sweeter it is when you get it. So, and also the marathon is more, for me, it has some emotional or spiritual moments. For example, I love the magical moment when after kilometer 30, 35, there is a moment when no one's talking anymore. There's no
only
music.
The pacer.
Yeah, not even then. And everyone's quiet, and all you can hear is the feet stomping, and not even panting, because people think when you run fast, yes, you are panting. Here you just have, if anything, heavy breathing, or just people breathing, concentrating, and you feel I sometimes think of this quote by Shakespeare, we few, we happy few, and we the band of brothers. You really are a band of brothers with people that you don't know, but you're all sticking together. You have a common aim, and you go for it, and you don't need to talk, okay? Or look, so it's interesting because you're doing something highly individual because it's you and your legs, but everyone's going for the same aim, and you can hear this noise and this going on and on. That's why whenever I train, I'm always listening to podcasts such as this one, or sometimes to music. Normally it's podcast, but when I do a race, no matter which distance it is, I never listen to music, podcast, or anything. I want to listen to the race, but not so much, well, obviously people cheering, but not so much the atmosphere, but my inner feelings, and also how you get all these noises from within the race, how, and that's one of my favorite moments. It's a kind of nirvana that happens maybe for 3-4 minutes every now and then in a marathon, when everyone's going for the common aim. And that's something that I only get in these kind of races, also because I feel I'm really at my own limits. I reach my own limits, and well, every year is a little bit harder. Okay, and I find also that the week before it's mentally exhausting because you're just putting yourself in all the possible scenarios, and you have your doubts and so on. And that doesn't happen with any other race. Okay, just with a half marathon or a 10K, just go like, will I be fast enough? Will I get a PB, or will I not go down a lot? But with the marathon, you really think you may not finish it, and that's a powerful feeling as well. But a very, it's quite exhausting. I wouldn't be able to do it week in, week out like some people do. I have to leave it for certain times.
If I recount the number of marathons you have run, 19, you've only been running for 13 or 14 years. So you have been running sometimes more than one marathon a year.
Yeah. So I've done, for the past few years, I've done one in spring and one in autumn. So I think that suits me well, because then you have between now, so I always do Madrid, and then I would look for another one in autumn. So that will give me maybe a month now to rest and get to summer. Well, rest, I keep training, but mentally I feel more relaxed. And then you get the summer where running is always exciting because you're going away, you're going on holiday, you're in different places. And I like that. And then you come back in September and you're ready to start training seriously for the marathon. And then the same cycle happens again until Christmas. You're a bit relaxed. And then after Christmas, you start putting in the miles and doing the serious training for the marathon. So that works out well. And that keeps me excited. And also in autumn, if I can combine that with traveling, then that's great, because you can go to another place. But it's true that this past marathon, I find it, or the one I've just done, I find it quite mentally quite tiring. I didn't have really good energy before going into it. Then it turned out okay, and I'm glad it did. But maybe because the previous one I did in Nice in France, it was incredibly hot. And then the last 10 kilometers, it was hell because it was 28 degrees, 100% humidity. I was dehydrated, and I had a really bad experience. And then this has reconciled me with marathon running.
No, that's great, because it was a hot day, though. Madrid.
Yeah, it was, but the heat in Madrid is more bearable for me.
You're
for
used
people
to it.
who always train here, we're used to it, and humidity we're not used to it at all. So it is this kind of feeling. So it suits me well, and as I said, it really is a feeling that if you can achieve it, I think I recommend it to anyone. You put yourself, you test yourself, and you try to reach your limits wherever they are, and it's a nice feeling when you achieve that.
Yeah, I totally agree with you what you say about kilometer 35. I still remember from last year, I didn't really know what to feel anymore. And the pacer said, I remember this. He said, okay, guys, this is a marathon. You have to suffer a little bit. And I was like, yeah, you're right. This is the suffering you're not used to when you do a half marathon. You never go that far. Yeah. Even in a training run, I never run 35 kilometers, but that was really hard. And I really had to dig very deep, as you said, inside, like, okay, just go on, one foot. And
but it's a teaching for life, I think. It's one, there are so many things that, when I ran my first marathon, I was at the same time doing this, is one of these particular things we have in Spain. If you want to become a state teacher, you need to pass a competitive exam that takes place every 2 years, and it's something we call oposición. But in any case, the bottom line is that you need to spend the best part of 9 months preparing for a one-day exam that it may turn out okay or not. Exactly. And that's pretty much your first marathon, you know? You just prepare and prepare. And when you start training and you have your marathon in mind, okay, you do your plan for 4 months, but you have that for a year. You're thinking next year that'll be me. And you know you're just doing your first few runs, and your objective is 4, 5, 6 months away, but you keep going, and it's cold and you still go out, and it's raining and you still go out. And that in so many other fields of life that happens as well. You know, when you have a big exam, you're writing a PhD, you're studying a university degree, preparing a big project, then that's what life is. So it's a metaphor for life as well, how you need to train, you have to prepare, and when the moment comes, you just need to, sometimes you need to knuckle down and get on with things and not think, you know, just keep going, don't think, and that's it. So I also like that part of it, you know. There's definitely a spiritual side to running, and this the loneliness of the long distance runner, but there's a beauty in it as well.
Yeah, I love the analogy you just used about the state exam for teachers in your case and the marathon, and that you have to give your best on that one day and you don't have another chance. It's really like that. So you have, as I said before, you have run 19 marathons. And I told you there's a book I love. It's a French book by a French writer. I think it was published, in the 80s or in the 90s or something. It's written by Philippe Delerme. And in Spanish, it was translated as El primer sorbo de cerveza y otros placeres de la vida. And it's basically about first times in life. You know, it's the first sip of cold beer is the best. Nothing compares to that first sip of beer. So there is something magical about first times. And when I think about a runner's journey, it's almost always the same. You start with a 5K, then you get kind of fed up with doing 5Ks. You want to go for a 10K, and then you sign up for a half marathon. And then all of a sudden, you find yourself towing the line of a full marathon. In your case, after having completed, because you completed all those marathons, have you ever played with the idea of running an ultra?
No.
I love it.
As I feel it, no.
You are so sure of yourself. I love that.
No, I'm very non-understated. I'm very non-British in my so my British friends tell me they sometimes find it somehow shocking. They say, well, I wouldn't have considered, it's a no. So for me, I agree with you that I like this idea of being a beginner in life in so many things rather than an expert. And there's there's a trend that it's nice to be a beginner and know a little bit about lots of things. But in this case, the marathon is my upper limit. I feel completely fulfilled by it. I generally have no interest in trying further distances. It doesn't look like it doesn't appeal as a challenge to me, or even trail running. You know, I like mountains, I like nature, but I'm very happy running in a city and happy with what I do, because I think what I really like is running and preparing and training for the marathon rather than the race itself or the challenge. I like the challenge of keeping up my running, of doing my 3 times a week of training. And then if there are races, well, I don't do so many races a year. I would do maybe 4 or 5 races in a year, including the marathon. And for me, I don't feel I need any more challenges or going up a distance or doing these things. I totally respect people that would do it, but I feel that the marathon is my upper limit, and I don't feel the need to do anything else.
Great answer. I love it. So you ran your first marathon when you were 32 years old. You're now 45. And training-wise, what has changed over the years? I mean, you talked about it a little bit, aging. How has aging impacted your times and your personal goals?
Well, it has. If I look back at my performance, I peaked in 2018, 2019. That's when I got my 3:08 in the Madrid Marathon. People talk about personal best. Well, my personal best is in Madrid. And then I did my best times in every single distance. And then I
In
don't know if it was
2018, sorry,
2018,
2018
19,
and
between 18
19.
and 19. That
Not
was
so long ago,
my best
yeah.
time.
38,
Yeah, but then,
39, 40,
yeah.
something, yeah.
But having said that, I've got friends that are exactly my age and they're getting their personal best now, or people that got it when they were 35. I think it has to do first with your training and also with your mental state and so on. And for me, if I look back on my performance, I think lockdown was, after lockdown, things changed. And I cannot really put a finger on how they changed, but I think I lost a bit of shape like everyone did, but also I lost a bit of I lost a bit of my mojo, as Austin Powers used to say. I lost a bit of motivation, I lost a bit of momentum because it makes you wonder, what do I really like about this? No, I enjoy running, that's for sure, as I've said before. Do I enjoy competing? I'm not so sure. Am I ready to sacrifice? Okay, we still do. I mean, I don't believe anyone who takes their running seriously doesn't care about eating, drinking, smoking, whatever. Okay, we know cases, but most of us try to lead a reasonably healthy life. But also, you think, am I ready to sacrifice all this
again,
the way I was doing it, to keep in such a good shape and also be on your prime, on your best moments, and so on? So I think that sort of got into my head, and it just a tiny bit, but that made me slow down. And now I would say, because I didn't run between 2020 and 2020, at the end of 2021, so I didn't run for 2 years basically, and I'm still trying to readjust to how I'm becoming older and slower, and how it's okay to go with, well, my last marathon before lockdown was 3:17, and then I've gone to 3:34 last week. So it's one
not
of these
bad
things
at all.
yeah, but still you need to think, okay, I'm a slower guy. I used to look back and see the 3:30 pacer before, or I used to almost be close to the 3:15 mark, and I was a fast runner, and I was under 1:30 in every half marathon, and under 40 for the 10K, and how you're going over those landmarks and just having to readjust to, that's the new me, and the other one is not going to come back because I'm not ready to sacrifice. I'm not ready to train an extra day. I don't like going to the gym. I don't have the time. So I need to enjoy what I do if I want to keep competing, or maybe stop taking part in races at some point and continue running, which is one of those
ridiculous.
Things but I mean, it's one of those things that you cannot fool yourself. You cannot keep thinking, well, I'm going to get better just because. No, my aim is maybe to, if at all possible, next year do similar time to the one I'm doing this year, slightly better, slightly worse, but not go completely off. Or maybe my aim has to be a different one, and just finish the race or pace someone, or So it's just looking for other objectives that keep you motivated. But having said that, I mean, running for me is an essential part of my life by now. So I'm convinced that even if I stopped taking part in races, I would still continue running because I like it a lot, and it keeps me focused and gives me energy, and so that part is sure.
Yeah, wow, amazing. Another question. As I said in the presentation, you are a returning guest on the A Tu Ritmo podcast, hosted by Luis Blanco and Chema Martinez Pastor. It's for non-elite runners, amateur runners, and this podcast exists already for a very long time. I think it's has been on the air for more than 10 years.
Yeah.
And normally you share interesting anecdotes from the running world. You're not interested in training plans or the newest or fastest shoes or the latest hype about this or that recovery drink. You normally tell remarkable stories behind the everyday runner, or you talk about running history. So is there an anecdote or story that got your attention these days and you would like to share with us?
Well, the one that has really taken my attention has been now that he's retired from marathon, is Mo Farah as a character. I find him terribly interesting, and I did find his original story, what we now is the made-up story. I found it really interesting how he came as a refugee and with the help of a teacher. He spoke no English, and I think it really touched my heart as well, because it was a teacher that believed in him, and there's this kind of like, oh, how great we teachers are and how much we do for the world, type of feeling. But I loved his story. And then when he decided, I'm sure your listeners know that last summer he decided to come public and say, no, I was trafficked as a child. I came here and I was a child slave until I could run away, and school helped me, and I was in foster care, and it's a horrible, from the human point of view, it's horrible, and how he can, he could excel in his running, and how could that could be liberating. I saw the documentary he did for the BBC, where his wife appeared as well, and she knew part of the story, and how he couldn't come out and say what the truth was, and now he felt he was ready. So I like his story and his sort of fairy tale that he became a hero. Also being a Black African runner, how he's now Sir Mo Farah in the UK. So I like that story. I also like small stories. So I really like the ones that you talk about, and how this, for example, the tunnel guy, or how people reinvent themselves and they do something else. That I'm also drawn to. And then talking about classic stories, I'm fascinated by Satopek or Bikila and all the classic stories. I think they are, and all the ones, is one of those things. I think it's got to do with my being curious, and I like reading, and I like history, and anything that comes up, I pick up on that. And that's the bit I enjoy, as you said, rightly said. That's the bit I like about running, more than being like the latest gadget. For example, I haven't got a smartwatch. I have my watch is a Decathlon watch worth
Really?
€20, and yeah,
and it works.
It works, but that's all I need, because I tried one, and then even with when I had my BPM, I was just looking at is my heart rate, is it too high, is it too low, and then the pace and this kilometer is, and then I decided I had to downgrade, and I went for a simple watch. Or now, for example, in the marathon, or when I run races, I only look at it every 5 kilometers, because I think otherwise it's too much pressure. Or when I'm training, I always train around the same places. If I have to do interval training, and I know where the kilometer is and where the 3 kilometer mark is, and so on, and I try to keep it simple and the same. So that's why I sort of protect myself from the latest trend about nutrition and so on. But I like to read about the human side of running.
Yeah, I love what you say. Same here. Absolutely same here. I try to keep things simple, because otherwise you get distracted by all those shiny things. And that's the nice part about running. You only need running shoes and a t-shirt and some shorts, and that's the basics. So,
and you live from your doorstep, which is also a great advantage, compared to people, and everything's done in an hour as well. So it's perfect for I do enjoy running with other people, of course, but I do like running on my own quite a lot. I enjoy my own company, and I think it depends on also the stage you're at in life. But it's nice to have a bit of me time, when you can say, okay, this hour is for me. My phone, I won't hear if it rings, because I'm listening to something else, and this is me and the road, and that. What I said before, I think it's also great that you can just put your shoes everywhere you travel, and then think that you are running in a different place. To me, it makes me feel very special, when you are cruising the streets of any city you've been to, and you're doing it early in the morning, and you think, well, this is special, or I'm going to discover another part of town, or I'm going to go to the same places I'm going to be going with my family or with my friends later, but I'm going to see it in a different light. So that's one of the great things about running, that it can go with you wherever you go.
Yeah, absolutely. And what you said about Sir Mo Farah, I think he finished 9th at his last London Marathon this year, right? Yeah. Very, very emotional.
And it's also this thing about a bit connected to what I was saying about your person always trying to go for your PB. Sometimes if we only went for PBs, in this case, I should retire, because I know for sure I'm not going to achieve anything faster, because I'd probably get injured trying to do that. So it's nice to see that. And I think running is one of these sports where, on the one hand, I always have this joke that I've run against Gebre Selassie, coming back to this time in 2010 when I was in the same race. So if you play tennis, you'll never play against Nadal.
No.
Okay, but if you run, then you can run against Kipchoge. He'll get there in half the time that you did, but you both get out of the when the gun goes and you both have to start running at the same time and you're part of the same race. And I think professional runners have that feeling. So that's why Mo Farah finished 9th in 2 hours and 10, even though he wasn't winning anything, or Kipchoge, who gave a great example
6th,
when
I think.
in Boston. Yeah, when he finished 6th and he didn't achieve his aim at all. Anyone else in his position, 12 kilometers from the end, he would have said, okay, that's it, guys. I'm cutting my losses and I'm resting and I may run in a month's time. And he didn't. And that's a great example for all of us, you know? And I like the fact that they have this ethics, that they're an inspiration for us that you don't see in other sports where sports, professional sports, men and women are far from an example for us or for young people or for whoever. But in this case, they are, and there are great stories out there.
Yeah, you're right. I think it's the only sport where amateur runners or amateurs and professionals do exactly the same thing at the same time. And that's really remarkable.
And so many people, if you not if you take Africans, of course, but if you take people from smaller countries, many of them work. I was reading that the second British runner in the London Marathon, he's a nurse, and he's still working because he can't make enough money from running marathons. I know the Spanish champions from previous years, Amaya Sanfabio, Tamara Sanfabio, they're school teachers. They work sometimes as lifeguards in swimming pools, things like that. So they know that they're doing pretty much what you or I are doing. We have our day jobs and then we train. There's a small difference, but of course, they know what being an amateur means.
Yeah. Have you seen Arjen Robben's performance this year at the Rotterdam Marathon? He was excited because he cut off, he shaved 15 minutes of his first marathon time off. He was delighted. He said that he thinks that running a sub-3 marathon is elite sport. He said this is definitely not something for amateurs. He said that is absolutely top sport performance.
Well, I don't want to have sounding too pretentious here, but it's true that I'm sure you've met people that tell you they run marathons, they run 10K marathons, or they run the San Silvestre, the end of year marathon. Think, no, please show some respect to this. So it is true that it's hard, but you need to be ready for it. And as I said, it's great that you cannot be anonymous when you are anonymous, but at the same time you can't be. So if you're someone famous, you cannot have your VIP lane in a marathon. If you're doing a marathon and you're doing a 3:30 marathon, you'll be running alongside me, no matter how famous you are. You know?
Exactly.
And that's one of the beauties here, that you don't have a private tennis court, or you're not playing football in your own pitch. You're running alongside other people, or you have to run on your own. And for example, here I've seen by chance, I saw the president of Spain taking part in a 10K race.
Zapatero or Pedro Sánchez?
No, Pedro Sánchez. He did one against domestic violence. Zapatero has run quite a few half marathons, but the thing is that he had to go. I think he went to Edinburgh once, and he ran there because he was totally anonymous there. But it is one of those things that, you're running whoever it is. So if Arjen Robben is running, then you have to run along. If he wants to run, he'll have to run alongside other people. So that's part of the nice thing here.
Yeah, I love that. Yes. So we have been talking about your running CV, but let's go back. Let's talk a little bit about your job, because you're an English teacher who runs, and you teach adolescents, 15, 16-year-olds, I guess, or
12 to 18 in general.
12 to 18. You have the whole range. So have you inspired your students, or have you tried to spark their interest in running? Do they think you're weird? Did you wear your medal to school on Monday? Tell me about that.
No, I didn't wear. Not my medal. I felt tempted to wear my T-shirt, but to be honest, I think they're not very impressed with that. They're too young.
They're too young to be impressed.
So sometimes, I mention in passing that I like running, but I think the way they see it is a bit like a parent thing. So it's the same as like in AC/DC or like in rock. They're like, oh yeah, my dad also likes the Rolling Stones. Yes. So, or my dad also goes running, you know, it's not connected to them, because if you think about it, and that's something that you can talk about in another podcast, is the business side of running is, from my point of view, based on the fact that it's over 30s that do it, people that have money to spare. Maybe we're not millionaires, but we have money to spare. And when people are in their 20s, they don't need to go running to look fabulous. You know, it's this type of thing, and it's not so common.
They go to the gym.
They
have. They go to the gym to look fabulous. That's another kind of fabulous.
Yeah. So it's this thing that I find, if I try the metaphor of what we were talking about, the effort and so on, I think they switch up because you get into teacher talk. So they're not particularly.
But you're a young teacher.
Impressed.
I mean, you're not like the teachers I had. You look young. You act young. I mean, I don't think.
Well, thank you for that. I think I act young. Let's leave it there. But for them, I honestly think that it's more of like a daddy story, you know. And also, I've stopped trying to convince everyone to run. You know, when you start, you try to tell people, and then you just see that some people, same as I don't like, for example, swimming. It's not for me. It's one of those things that, and people can tell you about the benefits, and I just feel trapped there. The same happens with running, and I same as whoever tries to do it. I never laugh at people that run, you know. And I normally run in Retiro Park, which is the most central park in Madrid, and lots of people go there. And some people run even very slowly, more slowly than if they were probably walking. But still, I always respect everyone that tries it. But if people decide not to try, that's fine. And as I said, I've never had, in my over 20 years of teaching, I've had 2 or 3 students that did athletics, but no more. It's not a popular sport, and I understand it.
Yeah.
And running is not. My children are a bit more impressed with that running.
That's
but
great.
I think it's part of, you know, that, for example, they cross the finish line with me sometimes.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Or we go running together up to maybe 5K together every now and then. So they like that in as much as they like anything their mom and dad would do, you know. Yeah. But not my students. I have to confess, I haven't inspired them in that sense. I hope I'll be luckier.
Maybe they will think of you in 20 years. Oh, I had that teacher.
Yeah, maybe they would, of course, you know. And I bumped into, in the last few races, and in the marathon, I bumped into a former student of mine who must be about 30 now. And he always overtakes me in the last kilometer or half kilometer. And I was like, oh, and this last Sunday, he said, I'm your worst nightmare. And I said, no. On the other hand, when I meet you, I know I'm close to the finish line. So I'm always looking forward to seeing you. But that makes you happy, you know, that people keep up these good habits. But in no way do I think that it is connected to me inspiring them. It's a whole set of factors.
It's nice. Okay, you were talking about a BBC documentary about Sir Mo Farah. Do you know the name of that documentary? Is it available on what platform?
I don't know if it's available, because I saw it when I was in Britain. I think it's called The Real Mo Farah. Okay, it's the one that, and it's the one where he tells, it's not about his life
story.
It's about his personal story. Sorry, it is about his life, not about his running life.
Yeah.
Because I saw one on Amazon Prime, I think, or Netflix, one of the two, about his running career, and that was interesting enough. But this one was when he came clean. He hardly spoke about his sports achievement. He talked about what he had pieced together from his life, and in fact, they even went to a lawyer and to the Home Office to check if he was legal, because he had come into the country under a false name, and so of course it was many years ago, but it was a full-on journalistic investigation.
Wow, well, interesting. Is there a running book you would recommend for language learners? English language learners, sorry.
I would personally recommend 2, apart from the obvious, like what I talk about when I talk about running, or what's the name of this one? I just went off my head. The one about the guy in Mexico.
Born to Run, yeah.
Born to Run, yeah. About from those classics, I like 2 novels, or sort of novels, that really did something to me. One is Today We Die a Little by Richard Askwith.
Yeah.
And it's about Satopek and his amazing life story, and how, because the thing about him is that you go from the post-war years, post-Second World War years, until the Prague Spring, and from there to democracy, and you're looking at history through the eyes of this man who was an extraordinary human being at the same time. So I like the fact that, okay, you learn a little bit about the runner, but you also get to meet an incredibly interesting character, and that's a plus for me. And the other one I liked was The Perfect Mile by Neil Bascom, and it's about the first sub-4 mile, and Sir Roger Bannister, who again has an amazing life story and how he achieved that, and then knowing after that he was, that he retired because he had done all his running, and he became a very famous neurosurgeon in the UK, and it's connected as well to my personal story because I didn't know anything about that. But when I moved to London, I lived next to the house where he had been born. So I used to pass by and see one of these blue plaques that they put in buildings in England, say, Sir Roger Bannister was born here in whatever year. And I back then I didn't know who it was, but I kept passing by there. And then once you get to know the character and think, wow, there he was,
Yeah. I think he stopped running quite early, right?
Yeah, I think it was 25, 26 or something like that, because he had to stop doing, amateur things and sort of young people's things, and he started doing serious business. So, that was quite common back then, and thinking that it was just some kind of hobby or pastime, even though he went to the Olympics and he was as famous as Hillary when he went at the Mount Everest, and he achieved something that people thought it couldn't be achieved, and then he just retired and became he was even more famous as a doctor than he was, or as famous as he was as a runner.
Yeah, it's an amazing story. The book is amazing, The Perfect Mile, and it's about 3 guys who are at the same time trying to run a sub 4 mile, sub 4 minute mile. And curiously is when Roger Bannister runs this sub 4 minute mile, the other guys do it like in 2 or 3 months also. It all goes very, very fast.
But that says a lot about human mentality, right? How much we stop ourselves from achieving. And so, again, that's another side I liked about it, how you think you cannot do something until someone else does it, and think, well, if he can do it, I can do it.
Exactly. And about the other book, Today We'll Die a Little, or Richard Asquith, I think he's an extraordinary writer, and he went to the Czech Republic. He learned Czech. He met the widow of Emil Zatopek to really reconstruct the whole story. He went to the archives of the what is the name of the Stasi or the.
I don't know that. Yeah, but the secret police.
I mean, I read that book like 2 years ago. In one of the chapters, I really had to cry. Because it's very hard to accept all the suffering he had to go through. And at a certain point in his life, everybody was against him. And
he managed to antagonize people, first to antagonize the regime, and then he was degraded and he was picking up rubbish. And the legend has it that people would be cheering him when he picked up the rubbish, and he was even made to clean nuclear waste and stuff like that. But then he said he was sorry and he asked for forgiveness. He got that. And so when democracy came, he was again controversial because of that. So it's one of these things that you cannot win. But at the same time, you feel sorry for him because everyone tells wonderful stories. He had lots of friends in the running world, which was the one where he had been living. So it's a sad story, but it's a very human. So that's why I like these 2 books, because they go beyond the purely running manual or just an athlete telling you his experiences. I think those are the 2 that I would happily reread because of the human side and how they're very well written, both of them. In this tradition, it's a very Anglo-Saxon tradition of writing very good sports books that go beyond the topic of sport. And for example, Neil Bascom, the one that wrote The Perfect mine. He won a prestigious award for writing about Sea Biscuit, who was a famous horse, and the story of this horse. And I haven't read the book, but it had amazing reviews. And again, very well researched, very well told. And the background is this, or I read books about baseball teams, rowing teams, and it's just historic books that tell you a wonderful story.
Yeah. Sports literature, I think it doesn't get the acknowledgements it should, because there are some very good books out there. You're right. Mm-hmm. Last question. Mm-hmm. Are you on Strava or on any other social media? You don't strike me as a social media guy.
No. I've told you I have my
your Decathlon watch.
So no, I'm not, but I'm not, because partly is because when it came out, me being a secondary school teacher, I was a magnet for students looking me up and trying to find out about my life and so on. So I thought I couldn't be bothered, and now I'm not, So to be fair, my wife is, so we can keep in touch with people. Yeah. I'm no recluse of the world, but no, and also I use WhatsApp and I read things, so I'm in touch with people, but not on Strava, not on Facebook. I haven't got a Facebook page or Twitter or any of those things, so it's difficult to follow me. But it's difficult to follow me online, but with my slower pace, it's becoming easier to follow me when I run. So.
So thank you so much, Kike Nieto. It was fantastic to talk with you about Madrid and your experiences and the human side of running. So thank you so much. I would very much like to follow up with you on another episode about teaching English and how difficult it is sometimes for Spanish speakers, but that's another story.
Yeah, that would be fantastic. It really is a dream come true coming on your show.
Thank you so very much. Thank you. Thank you for listening to this episode of English for the Long Run. If you like this episode and don't want to miss the next one, don't forget to hit the subscribe or follow button. If you're interested in taking your English to the next level while listening and reading about running, don't forget to subscribe to my newsletter, www.englishforthelongrun.com. Bye for now.